All right, so we have done a lot. We have learned a lot of things that are going to be used in the next module for making our game. But we have one more thing, and I think it's really an important one, and that is event handlers. Have you ever wondered how computer programmers make programs that can have buttons and they can understand when you click on something, maybe a game you played and you're mashing all the buttons on the controller, or maybe something hits another item on the screen and it explodes, or even the game is won. All of those are what we call event handlers or events. They're basically things that are used to determine behavior of your program. And they're useful because they allow the user to interact with your program in some way. And they're really useful. And we're going to dive into Codesters and find out how to take advantage of these event handlers. So let's go and get started. So if you're looking at my screen right there, you'll see that I have already created a bunch of buttons with text. Now I took some time setting this up ahead of time, so don't think that you can just build this without trial and error. I had to do some trial and error. You're gonna get to play around with that too when you're building your games and when you're doing the understanding challenge for this activity. But what I want to do is I want to create these buttons so that they actually work. And you might notice these buttons are just simply, I'm calling them buttons, but they're just simply Codester squares and text boxes kind of thrown on top. So nothing super kind of advanced here. Now you might be wondering, how can you create a button out of one of these square objects? Well, if I run it right now, you might notice that really nothing's happening. It's just basically blank, nothing's occurring. So I'm going to need to go to my events section. So if you go to our tab in graphics under events, you're going to find a huge list, and they're kind of broken down into some major types of events: stage events and sprite events. We're going to be using the sprite events. So let's go ahead here, and we're going to go and take this sprite click. So we want to find out when our sprite is being clicked. So I've created all these sprites, and I want to find out what happens when they're clicked. Now you might notice there's this method being defined here. We have the definition, we have a method name, and we have some parameters being given. And then we also have this kind of call, but it's specifically to an event. And it also is part of the sprite. It is part of the object class. And it needs us to put one of these in there, because remember, whenever we see that word sprite, that means most likely we need to put our sprite name that we gave it. So I'm going to go and do winter underscore button. Okay, so that's this one right here, and let's see what happens. I'm going to click run and click on it, and you'll see it's working. I'm getting actually the name. And then I'm going to click on spring, nothing, summer, nothing, fall, nothing. Okay, now you might be wondering, first of all, how does it know to click on the winter and give you a name above winter? And why aren't the other ones working? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, when I give it this sprite winter, that means it's going to turn this sprite on and say, start listening. Listen for something clicking on you. Feel free to let us know when you're being clicked. And when you're being clicked, we're going to call this function and tell us who you are. Oh, you're the winter sprite, and we'll tell you something to do. And that's what's happening here. So guess what we have to do? We have to tell the other sprites to listen. So I'm just going to copy that a few times. And instead of winter button, I'm going to do my spring button, and I'm going to do my summer button, and finally I'll do my fall button. Okay, and then I am going to go to the definition and look at it. I think right now we're just going to leave it there. We're going to hit run and hit winter, spring, summer, fall. Awesome, they're all working now. Now I will say these aren't really what I want these buttons to do. I don't want them just to be winter, spring, summer, fall. I want them to actually change the stage background to these buttons' names. So basically I want to see the winter stage or the spring stage based on what I'm clicking. Now there's always multiple ways we could code this, but I found this to be one of the easier ways to code this specific kind of idea. So I could make a bunch of event kind of handlers and name a lot of things, but I find it's easier to just find out what sprite is being clicked and then choosing what to do. And that uses something we learned before called a conditional, those if statements. Now we know what sprite's being clicked, but we need to find out something that we can use in a condition. So I'm going to go ahead here and write the first conditional statement. So we're going to use the if, and then those parentheses, and then we're going to say sprite, because we're not talking about these guys up here. We're talking about the one that's been clicked, and that's going to be in this variable. And so this is sprite, and then we're going to hit the dot, and this is where knowing our interfaces for our objects is really useful. If I go to shapes, I can see down here there's some things about a setting, but there's also getters. And if I want, I can maybe get the color of the sprite. So I'm going to use that because these are all different colors, and I'm going to use the color to determine which sprite is being touched or clicked on. So if sprite dot get underscore color, and I'm just going to do that. That's going to basically get me the color of that sprite is equal to the color, let's say gray. Then what we want it to do is change the stage to winter. So I'm going to go to my stage and find that set background option, drop that in there, and I'm going to change that to winter. And then I'm just going to take this code and I'm just going to copy it a few times because I want to check all 4 buttons. I want to make sure that all these buttons are being checked. So we're going to do this 4 times. And for some reason, Codester likes to do double indentations on copy and paste. So I'm just going to clean that up. And now I'm going to go ahead here and type in green, because spring was green, and then spring here, and then summer was yellow, and summer here, and then finally fall was red, and I'm going to put fall here. And that's because there's stage names for those, and those are their color names. So I'm checking every single time a sprite gets clicked, what color are you? And depending on your color, change the stage to a specific season. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So I hit winter, there we go, we got winter. Let's go to spring, great, looking good. Summer, looking like fun. And fall, all right, we went through the whole seasons. And there we go, we have buttons working. Isn't that awesome? I think that's really cool that we can make our own buttons now. So think about this. Think about your ideas for what this could be useful in a game, and hit up that understanding challenge. And what I will want you to do is basically create your own project using event handlers, maybe if statements, maybe loops, combine them. Like I used those conditionals So try that out and then post it in that understanding challenge. And don't forget the quiz at the end. And then I will see you in the next module where we will start building our own game.